First things first, yes, I am dressed in the same way as the last video. I filmed them both at the same time. I'm trying to be productive, don't judge me. Also, you might notice I'm in a different mood today. I'm trying to keep it a bit of fun. The reality is, what Teal's doing is awful. What she is saying, what she is doing is awful. The consequences she has on people's lives, awful. But that doesn't mean we can't enjoy ourselves. It doesn't mean that there's not an opportunity to laugh in amongst all of this. The reality is very serious. And by making this video, I'm addressing a serious reality, but that doesn't mean we can't have a laugh while we do it. Okay, let's get on with the video. This week on Teal Swan unravels in front of the camera yet more unfalsifiable claims. So I was watching Teal's recent video on spirit minerals, or as I like to call it, rocks are definitely alive. They definitely have feelings and they can definitely like or dislike you. Of course, all rocks love Teal because it's impossible for anyone not to love Teal, and if they don't love her, there's something wrong with them. In the video, she, as per usual, makes a lot of unsubstantiated, unfalsifiable claims about basically crystals. And I'm sitting there watching this video and I'm questioning my life choices and I'm thinking, why is she saying this? Why is she saying these things? It's obviously not true. Does she actually believe this? I mean, there's two options. She either actually believes this and she thinks it's useful information, rocks, crystals, that's a useful thing to tell people who are depressed and suicidal, or she's sitting there essentially lying to these people. I mean, we're talking about people that are eating out of her hand, hundreds of thousands of people eating out of her hands, and she may just be sitting there lying to these people. So I thought it might be fun to operate on the assumption that she is lying for the sake of this video, and compare some of the things that she says and that she does to those of a pathological liar. So come with me on this journey that we're going to call Is Teal Swan Lying? So this is how this is going to work. I'm going to go through the first 3 traits on a list that's on psychcentral of 13 personality traits of someone that is more likely to be a pathological liar. Where these traits are present, the person exhibiting them is more likely to be a pathological liar. For each one, I'm going to give you direct quotes from Teal or examples of things that she's done, and I'm going to leave it to you to decide whether she's lying or she's living in a fantasy or both. If you get something out of this video and you want to see more of the same kind of thing, just let me know in the comments and I'll do the rest of the list. As I say, there's 13. I'll just do the first 3 today because there's a lot to go through and she exhibits a lot. Also, I just want to give a shout out to Lavaughn for helping me put this video together. She has been ace while I've been making these videos, and she has a literal treasure trove of knowledge on Teal related things. So thank you, Lavaughn, and if you the viewer wants to check out anything that Lavaughn's doing, you can do that. Her site Celestial Reflections is fantastic. I'll link that in the description below. So 2 things to consider here. One is fixed fantasy. Now, a fixed fantasy is a term that refers to when someone believes something despite it being unverifiable, despite there not being any way to prove whether it's true in reality or not. It's quite common with people who have personality disorders. I've said before, I think that Teal possibly does have a personality disorder. I'm not professional though, so don't take my word for that, but I do think it's possible she has a personality disorder. It can be true that she has a fixed fantasy and a personality disorder and be lying at the same time, but I'll leave that for you to decide based on what you see in this video and what she just generally exudes as a person. So the second thing is to consider falsifiability. So if you're not familiar with it, falsifiability is essentially the attribute something might or might not have to prove whether it is true or not in reality. So if something is falsifiable, you can prove that it is not true. If it isn't falsifiable, you can't prove it's not true. It's unverifiable whether it is true or not. So if I say minerals are alive, that is falsifiable. They are not alive. We can prove they're not alive. An example of an unfalsifiable claim is a direct quote from Teal. I'll read it here. When you die, it's like lining up with the best food you've ever eaten and the lover who you've always wanted. Unfalsifiable claim. There's no way to prove whether that's true or not. And if you want examples of more unfalsifiable claims, listen up, there's plenty in this video. And if you're a Tealer watching this, feel free to practice your apologetics in the comments. So point number 1 is narcissism and self-centered behaviours and thought patterns. So straight in there with another unfalsifiable claim, and this one illustrates the point of narcissism, self-centeredness pretty well. Again, I'll read. Teal says, "I did not come to Earth with a specific message. I came here as a course turner. I am the game changer. Another example of this is in her book Shadows After... I keep saying after dawn. It's before dawn. They will be after dawn as well. If you're a Tealer, there's shadows everywhere. Inescapable shadows. But in her book Shadows Before Dawn, Teal tells her followers to prioritise how they feel above anything else. We can assume that she takes her own advice here as well, as she tends to just basically tell everyone to be how she is in a lot of cases. And we can, I think we can agree that basing everything on how you feel in the moment, that's terrible advice. That's terrible advice. I'm sure I don't need to give examples on that one. I'm sure you can think of a number of examples, perfect times when how you feel is not the best thing to base your decisions and actions on. And often the best choice to make is based on your own internal values and your morals, not how you feel. That's not always the case, but there's a lot of times where what you want is not in keeping with your own personal values and morals. And in that instance, it's a terrible idea to base every decision on how you feel. There we go. Here's another one, fun one, which covers narcissism, self-centered behaviour thoughts quite well. People that used to be close to Teal, I believe, when leaving proximity with her, began to have nightmares about her. When someone questioned her directly about that, she said, and I quote, "I am the symbolic representation of authority to people." This great example of narcissism and self-centeredness was actually written on her blog. And reading this, I'm finding myself thinking, she actually wrote this. Like, this got through the filter of, should I say this? Should I write this? And she wrote it and published it. I'm going to read it. I'm going to read it verbatim. "Not a day goes by without someone telling me that they are not a fan, but that they love my work, in order to let me know that they don't want me to consider myself above them. How dare they? Not a day goes by that I don't get an email or message that says, 'You're not my God. I see you are a person just like the rest of us,' so as to pull me off my pedestal." How mistaken a person could be to think Teal's not a god. "Not a day goes by that someone doesn't show up late or leave early in order to send the message that they have higher priorities than me, so I can get the message that they do not regard me as a bigger deal than they are." I mean, and these comments and actions are all from people that like me. And if you're in a position that I am in, you get to see this wound. It's a wound if people don't think she's better than them. If you're in a position that I am in, you get to see this wound in people every day, because not a day goes by that someone isn't carrying out an unconscious power struggle with you. I just want to note as well that when she says unconscious, it's similar to when she says passive. Again, it's a kind of claim that she knows the person more than they do. It's quite a common thing in narcissism, actually, that a person will say, "I know you better than you know yourself," or act as if they know a person better than they know themselves. Point number 2 is selfishness. Okay, selfishness in the case of Teal, again, plenty of examples. The law of attraction covers this pretty well. It's about as selfish as you can get in a lot of instances, because you're basically just focusing on yourself all the time. You don't need to focus on anyone else, you don't need to do anything, you just need to focus on you. Other people, nah, I mean, they're just you anyway, don't you know? They're you, everyone's one, right? And so if you're focusing on yourself, then you're kind of also focusing on other people, but it's better, because you're focusing on yourself. Speaking of selfishness, just look at anything on our blog and you get a perfect prime example of grandiose self-delusion in the key of selfish sanctimoniousness. Speaking of her blog, Teal wrote a strangely titled blog post called, "Is it right or wrong to use people?" I don't know who's got that question, but okay. There's this great quote here as well, which adds to the previous point. She says, "Our problem on this planet is not selfishness. It's that we won't let ourselves be selfish." So not only is she exhibiting clear signs of selfishness, she is telling everyone that selfishness is good. Point number 3, and this is the final point, which is an abusive attitude. And again, plenty of examples of this for Teal. I'll just give you a couple. In a video on codependency, Teal essentially bullies a member of her inner circle, Blake Dyer, into accepting her definition of codependency and that he is codependent, even though her definition of codependency changes multiple times throughout the video and actually doesn't quite match up to the actual definition of codependency. Another example of this is from the Dublin workshop, where Teal essentially goes really hard on someone with CFS. She also gives her version of the explanation for CFS, which is just it's not true. Anxiety occurs quite often with CFS, and she's saying that anxiety is what is causing her CFS. She says that this woman's CFS is caused by her inability to say no and to make choices to do things that aren't things she doesn't want to do, things that don't make her feel good. There's no medical reason to believe this. In fact, where anxiety occurs with CFS, it is more likely that the CFS is causing the anxiety and not the other way around. And funnily enough, 70 to 90% of people that have CFS also experience anxiety. So unfortunately, this advice from Teal, aside from the placebo effects which may be experienced, will ultimately just leave this woman suffering more and struggling with something that is a consequence of her physical condition and not something that she can just kind of fix in her head. So this woman comes to Teal, asks for something that is legitimately serious, legitimately something she needs help with, and Teal's just blah blah blah, explains it away, and then proceeds to rip this woman apart. So those are the 3 points: narcissism, self-centered behaviour and thoughts, selfishness, and abusive attitudes. There's plenty of examples of those out there on the internet. You just need to look for them. Honestly, you will find them. There's also a link that I've put in the description as well, which is a prime example of Teal exhibiting all 3 of these things all at once. I'm not going to go into that in this video because it's quite a sensitive subject, and there's a lot in this video already. It's quite a long video, but you can check that out. I've put that in the description below. Something important to notice here is that where these things are present, the person exhibiting them is more likely to be a pathological liar. It doesn't mean they are, but it means that they're more likely to be a pathological liar. In this instance, we're looking at these 3 things being proven time and time and time again. So essentially, we're looking at the likelihood of a pathological liar, of Teal being a pathological liar, is around 3 times higher than it would have been if we weren't talking about someone who claims to have been created by a panel of aliens to make her beautiful so everyone would listen to her in her life. But we're talking about Teal Swan, the personal transformational revolutionary or whatever. Someone who sees it within her grasp to one day buy countries. So, if you want me to do another video like this, if you got something out of this video, you enjoyed it, then let me know in the comments below. There's plenty more traits on that list, and guaranteed she exhibits them all. Just find some examples of that. And if there's any other Teal related stuff that you want to see me take up as well, then you can just dump that in the comments as well. I'd be interested to see. Thank you everyone that's been commenting so far and watching the videos, sharing the videos, liking the videos. I'm really, really grateful. Not just for myself, but also because I know that this information spread out there, reaching someone that's in Teal's whole thing and starting to question her, that's going to be really important. That's going to make a huge difference for her, for them, for her as well, because it's going to be less people following her, but for them, because as I say, it's a really confusing, really difficult thing to get out of a cult, and the more resources available, the better. So, thank you again for watching, and I will see you in the next one.